Welcome to today's Explainer. Go ahead and settle in, because we're diving straight into a completely wild, true story of loyalty, betrayal, and the ultimate workplace vindication. And trust me, this one is served ice cold, with a massive side of undeniable corporate receipts. It's a tale that really exposes the hidden, ugly underbelly of toxic company culture, and shows exactly how fast the tables can turn when the truth finally comes to light.
My boss fired me to save his job. Then, everything backfired. Just let that sink in for a second. Imagine giving literally years of your life to a company, bleeding for a massive project, only to be thrown to the wolves in a matter of minutes just to protect an incompetent manager. Well, you don't really have to imagine it, because that's exactly what happened in the case study we're dissecting today.
So, let's meet our main characters. First up, we've got Ryan. He'd been with the company for almost 6 years. He wasn't a manager, and he definitely didn't pretend to be some ego-driven superstar. He was just the reliable veteran. You know the type, right? The kind of guy who quietly trains the new hires, stays late to clean up other people's messes, and tackles the problems nobody else wants to touch. Then, there's Kevin, his manager. Kevin had been there less than a year. But Kevin had a very specific, kind of dangerous talent. He was an opportunistic manager who somehow made every single team's success sound like his own personal achievement and every failure sound like someone else's fault.
At first, when Kevin started swooping in, taking credit for Ryan's major projects and casually shifting blame onto him behind closed doors, Ryan just ignored it. He kept his head down. Why? Well, because his personal stakes were just too high. A mortgage, a wife, a young daughter. Ryan literally had no interest in playing petty office politics or getting dragged into drama. He just needed to provide for his family. So he put up with it. But then the real inciting incident happens. The company lands its biggest client in years. We're talking about a massive, high-stakes contract worth millions of dollars. The pressure cooker was officially turned up to maximum, and the entire weight of this massive implementation rested squarely on the shoulders of the development and project teams. I mean, everything had to be absolutely perfect.
What followed was a grueling 3-month crunch. Ryan practically moved into the office to build out the required system. Late nights, weekends, missed family dinners. The entire multi-million-dollar project depended completely on the architecture he was desperately trying to finish. And Kevin? Well, Kevin barely contributed a thing. He'd vanish into closed-door meetings all day and only pop his head out to demand progress updates from Ryan. But Ryan didn't care. He just pushed through, and the tension kept building all the way up to launch day.
And then, launch day arrives, and it was an unmitigated disaster. The system completely, totally crashed. The multi-million-dollar client was absolutely furious. Executives were in full-blown panic mode, practically running through the halls, demanding to know what on earth had gone wrong. The tension in the air was just suffocating as millions of dollars seemingly evaporated into thin air.
Okay, let's dive into this next part because it's wild. Within hours of the crash, an emergency all-hands meeting is called. Ryan walks into the conference room, fully expecting a deep technical debrief so they can actually fix the issue. Instead, before he can even pull out a chair, Kevin points a finger directly at him across the table and announces to the terrified executives Ryan was responsible for the implementation.
Ryan was just stunned. But Kevin didn't stop there. He aggressively, loudly controlled the narrative. He claimed Ryan had ignored several warnings and failed to address critical problems that frankly Ryan had never even heard of. Every single time Ryan opened his mouth to explain the technical reality or defend himself, Kevin interrupted him, again and again. Kevin completely dominated the room until the executive's fury was entirely focused on Ryan. By the end of that meeting, the false story had solidified into accepted corporate truth. The catastrophic failure was entirely Ryan's fault.
The sheer speed of what happened next is staggering. Just 3 days later, HR makes the call. Ryan is officially terminated. 6 loyal, hardworking years at the company. Erased. Poof. Gone in a brutal 15-minute phone call. Can you even picture the emotional weight of that? Him packing his desk into a cardboard box. As he walked out, nobody in the office would even make eye contact with him. Ryan later said that the most agonizing part of the whole ordeal wasn't even losing the paycheck. It was the crushing realization of what had actually occurred behind the scenes. Someone had to take the fall to appease this angry client. A sacrifice was required, and Kevin had chosen him. In the grueling aftermath of all this, Ryan sat at home for weeks. He was searching for a new job, sure, but he was also deeply baffled. He knew his code, he knew his work, and he knew that crash simply should not have happened. Then, late one evening, his phone lights up. It's a message from a former coworker. Just 3 cryptic words. "You were right." And attached to that text was a major plot twist. A screenshot. What was actually in that screenshot literally changed everything. It was an email from months earlier. Ryan had discovered a serious issue, a potentially dangerous change to the system, and had explicitly flagged it to Kevin. And Kevin's reply? A direct, written order to ignore the problem because fixing it would delay the launch. Ryan had completely forgotten about it in the sleep-deprived chaos of the crunch. But there it was, time-stamped, documented, undeniable proof. Ryan wasn't responsible for the crash. Kevin was.
And suddenly, the dam just broke. Over the next few days, an underground network of angry coworkers started reaching out to Ryan in secret. They were completely disgusted by what Kevin had done. One by one, they leaked evidence to Ryan. A massive flood of emails, meeting notes, shared documents, and hidden warnings. A very clear, very damning pattern started to emerge. Kevin had chronically ignored multiple warnings from the team, and then systematically laid the groundwork to pin the inevitable explosion right on Ryan. Now, Ryan wasn't initially out for revenge, but he absolutely refused to let this lie stand on his professional record, so he methodically gets to work. He organized every single leaked email, every internal message, every instruction, and every single warning. He built an airtight, totally devastating dossier of evidence. When he was finally done, the file was over 200 pages long.
Then he hit send. But he didn't send it to Kevin. He didn't even bother wasting his time with HR. He sent this massive 200-page file directly to the company's senior leadership, completely bypassing the entire middle management structure. And the body of the email contained just one absolute mic drop sentence. "I believe you should know what actually happened."
The response was immediate, and it was explosive. The next morning, Ryan's phone was buzzing off the table. Former coworkers and friends were texting him nonstop. The office fallout was absolute chaos. Executives were arriving unexpectedly. Emergency meetings were being called out of nowhere. Doors were slammed shut and locked all day long. Rumors were swirling, and nobody on the floor knew exactly what was in that file, but everyone knew something massive was going down. Finally, on Friday afternoon, Ryan's phone rings. And it wasn't a coworker this time. It was one of the top executives. In fact, it was the exact same executive who had coldly approved Ryan's termination weeks earlier. The man sounded completely embarrassed. After a brief, super awkward conversation, he finally delivered the vindication Ryan had earned. He said, "We owe you an apology."
The executive explained that a rapid internal investigation had verified every single page of Ryan's dossier. The findings exposed Kevin's toxic management entirely. The investigation confirmed, without a shadow of a doubt, that Kevin had hidden critical information, he had ignored explicit warnings, he had directly misled upper management about the system's readiness, and most severely, he had intentionally shifted the blame onto an innocent employee.
The consequences were absolute. By the time the office doors opened on Monday morning, Kevin was gone. And I want to state firmly here, he wasn't quietly transferred to a different department, he wasn't reassigned to a lesser role to save face. His career at that company was completely, instantly destroyed, terminated and out the door.
Desperate to make things right, and, let's be honest, likely terrified of a massive wrongful termination lawsuit, the company scrambled to make amends. They formally offered Ryan his old job back. They threw in a significant pay raise to sweeten the deal, and even offered extra financial compensation for his time off. Everyone in the office fully expected their reliable 6-year fixer to walk back through those doors and save the day once again.
But Ryan dropped one final, completely surprising decision on them. He said no. You see, during the month he'd spent sitting at home, allegedly taking the fall, he had actively interviewed. He had already accepted a vastly superior position at another firm. His new job offered significantly more pay, way less stress, and most importantly, competent, supportive management. When he told the executive this over the phone, the executive actually paused, laughed a bit, and admitted, "Honestly, I don't blame you."
Now, it's really easy to look at this story and just cast Kevin as the ultimate villain. He was terrible, undoubtedly. But a year later, Ryan found out that several of the good coworkers who had helped him had also left the company. And they all cited the exact same reason for jumping ship. It begs a much bigger question, doesn't it? Was Kevin the real problem?
The harsh truth they all realized was this: Kevin wasn't the root problem. The company culture that allowed a deceptive, blame-shifting manager like Kevin to thrive, get promoted, and unchecked fire an innocent man, that toxic culture was the true villain. Ryan often says that getting fired felt like the worst day of his life in the moment, but looking back, it was the absolute best thing that ever happened to him. And it leaves us with a pretty compelling thought. Sometimes being forcefully pushed out of a fundamentally broken system is the only way to realize you actually deserve a much better one. What do you think? Have you ever had to escape a system like that to finally find your worth?